Hello, everyone. I hope you're all staying healthy and positive. We're continuing with our evening lessons in Hilchos Pesach. What we're discussing here are the various laws and customs in connection to preparation for Pesach and then the actual observance of Pesach. As usual, the sefer that we're using is Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the summarized version of the Code of Jewish Law. Highly recommended sefer. I really encourage everyone to learn it. What we're up to is Kuf Yud Tes, which is chapter or section 119. And tonight's lesson is about the laws of the evening of Pesach. Essentially, this means the Seder. Night of Pesach, we're supposed to have a Seder. What is the Seder? How do we do it? And some very important laws connected to that. They tell a story about a fellow who came to the Brisker Rav. Reb Chaim Brisker was a great Rav, and the fellow walked in just before Passover, and he said, Rebbe, can I use milk for the 4 cups at the Seder? We all know that Pesach night, you have to drink 4 cups of wine. Each cup represents another term that Hashem used in expressing the redemption of the Jewish people. I'll take you out, I'll redeem you, I will remove you or take you, and various different terms that are used expressing Hashem's taking us out of Egypt. And so this fellow asked Chaim Brisker, I know that you have to have wine. Can I use milk for the Seder? So Chaim Brisker looked at him and he said, well, it's a very good question. I have to consult some of the sources. I have to look in some of the holy books. I need to analyze this and research your question. Do me a favor. You know what? You go, here's money, use wine. And after Passover, I'll look into it, but I'm not going to have a chance before Pesach. There's so many questions that come in, so many issues that have to be resolved. And frankly, so much preparations, I won't be able to get to it. So he gives him the chunk of money, bag of money, and he left. As this fellow walked out of his study, his Rebbetzin, his wife, asks Reb Chaim Brisker, 1 second, any child in preschool knows that you have to use wine for the Seder. No one says you could use milk. You don't have to consult. You don't have to look. It's obvious. You have to use wine. You can't use milk. So Reb Chaim said, obviously, you can't use milk. And I know that it has to be wine. But I also know that if this fellow is asking me if I'm allowed to use milk for the Seder, that means he doesn't have wine. He can't afford the wine. And if he's asking to use milk, that means he has no meat for the Seder either. And chances are he doesn't have matzah as well. So he gave him a whole bag of money, enough to buy all the provisions that he needs for Pesach. It's so important as we get ready for Pesach that we don't forget about others in need, and we do whatever we can, especially in the current situation, to help others with their Pesach necessities. Says the Shulchan Aruch, even though every Shabbos and every Yontif you could sanctify, you could start Shabbos earlier, you could decide Shabbos starts at 7 p.m., you want to start it at 6:30, or so on. On Passover, on Pesach, you're not allowed to do that, and you have to start Pesach on time, because the not early. You can start it early, but you can't do the Seder early, because certain mitzvahs have to be done at night, just like the Korban Pesach had to be done at night, eaten at night. As the verse says, the pasuk says, you'll eat it, the basar, balayla hazan, this night. And the same thing applies to eating the matzah and drinking the wine. It must be on Pesach night per se. You can't decide to do it a little earlier because it's more convenient. You could get together earlier. You could start some of the prayers earlier, but the actual Seder and the wine and the matzah has to be after it's dark outside. And because Kiddush is one of the 4 cups, which the 4 cups have to be at night, we also have to have Kiddush until after it's dark outside. Now, many people have a custom, they put on a kittel. A kittel is a white overcoat, which is worn on Yom Kippur to remind us of the ultimate day of judgment after 120 years. It's the solemnity of the day The Chabad custom is not to wear a kittel at the Seder, but many people do have that custom. It's a mitzvah to give the children nuts and various different sweets, if you will. We don't really have sweets, but different nuts, maybe fruits, that they could occupy themselves so they shouldn't fall asleep, because we want them to ask questions at the Seder. And that's really the theme of the night. They should ask us questions. They should be curious and be involved in the Seder, because when they ask the questions, then we're able to answer them and use the opportunity as a teachable moment, like one of our presidents said, to talk about the slavery in Egypt and the Exodus and the fact that we have to see ourselves as free people and so on. Let's go back to the prior section. I want to cover several laws that are very important. A person should search, look, try to get very good wine for the mitzvah of the 4 cups. And if you have the opportunity to get red wine, and the red wine is as good as the white wine, meaning it's not that the red wine is some kind of cheap, simple, not tasty wine, and the white wine is unique and really enjoyable. If it's good red wine, and it's as kosher as the white wine, it's better to use red than white for the Seder. Why? Because the verse that talks about wine says Yis Adam, and we learn from there that red wine is more prominent and more rich, more special than white wine. In addition, when you have red wine, the redness of the wine reminds us of the blood. And in Egypt, one of the decrees that Paro did, sadistically, he would slaughter Jewish children and bathe himself in their blood. And to remember that suffering and really the miracle that we get out of that, we have the red wine represents that. Now, unfortunately, in Jewish history, we had situations where people made blood libels. And they came and they accused the Jewish people falsely that they need to put Christian blood into our matzah. And they would go to great lengths, even killing a Christian child and planting a body there and so on. It was a very big problem. It was a cause for pogroms and tremendous issues for the Jewish people. So because of that, in certain countries, and if it was a concern, we don't use red wine. No one should come and say, oh, it's blood, or it's to remember blood of any sort. They use white wine. Today, thank God, we're not dealing with that issue, and therefore, white wine is okay. I see that Facebook was trying to reconnect. Sorry for those that weren't able to follow. If you lose me on Facebook, YouTube seems to be very strong now. And take a moment, by the way, thumbs up, share, like, if you like. Okay. So what we were saying was, before Facebook went down, is that in certain countries, when there were blood libels against the Jewish people, accusing us of using blood for matzah, they did not use red wine, because they would say, oh, that's to remember the blood, or that is the blood, and so on. So white wine is fine. But in today's day and age, it's best to use red wine for the Seder. The second item at the Seder that we do after washing our hands is number 3. We dip something into something. And I say something because there are different opinions, which he discusses here, of what should be done. Some people do potatoes. You dip potatoes in salt water. Others use celery. And others use onions. The Chabad custom is to use an onion. We dip it into salt water, and that's to remember the tears of the Jewish people. Salt water is like tears, or tears are like salt water, and dipping it in the Seder reminds us of that concept. Now, when it comes to maror, the bitter herbs, what is maror exactly? What do you use for maror? And again, there are different opinions. It also has to do with where you live and what vegetable is available for you at that time. But let's say today it's horseradish, which we do a combination. We do horseradish root. He's very specific here. There are 2 parts to the root. There's the base that actually comes down. Then there's these things that protrude out of that. The things that protrude are not good for maror. It has to be the actual base, as well as romaine lettuce is what we use. And a combination of these together make up maror. It has to be bitter, and we grind that horseradish root to make it technically usable. But it's important that you don't grind it too early, and the bitterness shouldn't be completely aired out. There should be an ability to eat it, and it should have the what's the word I'm looking for? It should have the taste, the bitter taste. Hachareses. The other item that we have at the Seder is called charoses, and that is thick, and it reminds us of the cement that the Egyptians made the Jewish people use when they were required to do various different construction projects, building and whatever else they were doing, cities, buildings. To remember that hard labor, we have chareses. Now, chareses is made up of various different ingredients. And it's interesting, he says that you should use ingredients that have fruits and so on that Jewish people are compared to. In various different verses throughout Tanakh, we have times when Jewish people are compared to dates, or Jewish people are compared to apples, or Jewish people are compared to nuts, where it says that Hashem, an almond is something which is a nut which sprouts very quickly. And Hashem was very quick to take us out of our problems and so on. So we try to put this together in the chareses. Now, the Chabad custom is that we do apples, pears, nuts, then we add a little bit of wine. It has to do with not eating fruit which is unpeelable or what was available at certain times in history. But we make this mixture of chareses, of all these items together, and it looks, in a sense, like cement. It reminds us of the cement that the Jewish people used while we were building the projects in Egypt. Now, before you actually dip the maror in chareses, which that's what's done, we put a little bit of wine into the chareses. And the reason is you want to dampen it a little bit so it's dippable, if that's a word. So it's dippable into the maror, into the chareses when you use it. Now, we discuss this here, the importance, which doesn't really apply to this year, when Pesach will be Shabbos, certain things, certain activities are forbidden on Shabbos, and therefore you have to do it before Shabbos begins. Now, after the temple was destroyed, unfortunately, over 2,000 years ago, our sages have enacted several things to remember the temple, and more importantly, to remember things that we've done at the Seder, at the Pesach experience during the times of the temple. And one of those things is that on every Seder table, we should have two cooked items. One is to remember the Pesach offering, which we don't have today, a lamb. And the other one is a Karban Chagiga. Karban Chagiga is a festive offering, which was done on every holiday. To remember both of those things, you have to have two cooked items special for that. So for the Karban Pesach, what we use is a shank bone. Now, our custom is that we use a zroya, which is a neck of a chicken. The reason why we use a neck is because the word zroya, neck in Hebrew, also is the same word as zroya, an arm. And Hashem stretched out his arm, the verse says, and took us out of Mitzrayim. So to have that element, we use specifically that part of the chicken. If you don't have that, you can use a chicken leg. But the point is that there's so many symbolisms involved in every detail that we do at the Seder. It's really a beautiful thing if you learn about it and think into it when you celebrate the Seder. It has so much more meaning to it. Just want to say hello to everyone that's watching. Thanks for the comments, and it's good seeing you as well, David. Take a moment, please, share, subscribe, like, whatever you can do to spread the learning around. I greatly appreciate it. So we have the zroya, the chicken bone, at the Seder to remember the Karban Pesach. Now, for the Karban Chagiga, for the Chagiga offering, we have an egg, a hard-boiled egg. It's normally it should be hard-boiled. Other you can do soft-boiled and so on. But we have these items on the Seder plate. Interestingly, we don't eat roast meat on Pesach, so therefore the zroya, which is roasted, to remember the roasting of the Pesach offering, we get rid of the meat before, but if you didn't fully get rid of the meat off the bone, don't eat it until the next day. So this bone is not eaten. The egg, however, which is for the Karban Chagiga, we do eat that. and we eat it at the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, beginning of the holiday meal. We eat that during our Seder. Before the Seder begins, a person should prepare their seat, prepare your place, make it nice. Some people have a custom to put pillows on there or nice types of chair covers, various different things. It's a night of royalty, and we're all princes, and many of the things we do at the Seder express that. So prepare yourself for that. Now prepare your seat in a way that you should be able to lean to the left when you eat the matzah and drink the wine, because it's a symbol of freedom and a symbol of royalty to lean while you eat. Now, regardless if you're a righty or a lefty, the leaning is done to the left side. It has to do with the way the food goes down. It doesn't matter if you're righty or lefty, the anatomy of your body is the same. And it's dangerous to lean to your right while you eat. So you prepare in a way that your chair is situated in such a way that you could lean to your left. In the olden days, or in royalty, they recline when they eat. That's why we do that at the Seder. It's interesting. He doesn't just say do it. He says prepare in advance. It's like many things in life. If you want to have the real experience and you really want to enjoy it, it's about the preparation. It's about what happens before. Now, it's special to prepare your plate and everything that you need for the Seder in advance before you actually come home from shul. Whether someone else does it for you, your family does it, or you do it earlier. When you come home from shul, you should be ready for the Seder. There's a few technical things you have to take care of. I don't mean technical in the literal sense, but some stuff you got to do, that's fine. But for the most part, the items that you need should be on the Seder. So when you come home, it's ready. We learned this in our laws of Shabbos, and we were discussing that a few weeks ago, is that when a person comes home, his table should also be set. It should be ready. That's part of the enjoyment, part of the process. That's how it's appropriate to celebrate Pesach. Now, there is a concept that during the year, we don't put all of our beautiful china out at once on the Seder. We remember the destruction of the temple. We know that we don't have the full glory of the Jewish people right now. So we minimize a little bit in the display of our own dishes and some of the comforts. However, when it comes to Pesach, it's important to put everything out. Put all of your dishes out. Put all of your beautiful items on the table. It's a table of royalty, and it should be set that way, and you should really enjoy in a regal way the Pesach Seder. What happens on the Pesach plate, the Seder plate? What goes there? So number one, you put 3 matzahs, and I hope to do a class later on the details and more of the specifics, but you put 3 matzahs. The bottom one represents Yisrael, the category of the Jewish people. The middle is the Levi of the Jews, and Kohen are the priests, the Kohenim among us. Now, that's 3 matzahs. On top of that, we put something, whether it's a plate, or it's a napkin, or a piece of silver foil, something above the matzahs, and then you have several items on the Seder plate, 6 items. On the right side, top right, you have the zroya, which we discussed, which is the bone, the chicken shank bone or neck of a chicken, to remind us of the Pesach offering. Opposite that, on the left side, you have the egg, the beitza, which is the reminder of the Karban Chagiga offering. In the center, just below them, you have the mutter. Mutter is the bitter herb. We said it's a combination of romaine lettuce and ground or chopped horseradish root. On the bottom right side, under the zroya, under the neck, we have the chareisas. That's that mixture of apples, nuts, and pears, which is the symbol, the remembrance of the cement that the Jewish people used. Opposite that, on the left side, is the karpas. Karpas is the onion, or potato if you use that we use to dip into salt water to remember the tears of the Jewish people, of the suffering in slavery in Egypt. And below that, in the center, is the maror, second set of maror, which we use for the kerech, for the sandwich, which happens at the Seder. The cups that you use for Kiddush and for the drinking of the 4 cups of the Seder should be complete. It shouldn't have any chips in it. It shouldn't be cracked in any way. It should be a nice, good cup. It should be rinsed well. It's honorable, it's special. That's how we do it. Make sure that it could contain at least a revius. A revius is about 3.5 ounces, because that would be the amount that you need to fulfill the mitzvah of the 4 cups. A son at his father's Seder table should lean. Now, generally speaking, there's a question about respect. When you lean while you eat, when you recline, which is a symbol of royalty, if you're sitting in front of a king, it would be disrespectful to do that. He is the king. However, a son in front of his father, although he has to have the respect and the honor, he should still lean, recline when he eats. But a student by his teacher doesn't mean a typical teacher. It means like a rebbe, someone that is a grandmaster rabbi. A rebbe, he does not lean out of respect. Friends, have a wonderful evening. Again, please share, like, subscribe. If you have any questions, feel free to ask on this topic or not. And by the way, we live in interesting times right now. And if you want to reach out or you want to ask anything, you want to talk or you want to connect, please don't hesitate. You can email, message, subscribe, Facebook, whatever works for you. Sei gesund. See you soon.